Good evening, everyone, and welcome. I'd like to call the City of Homestead City Council Workshop to order. Today is Wednesday, January 11th, 2023, and it is now 5:35 p.m. Roll call, Madam Clerk.
Councilwoman Bailey? Here. Councilman Ross? Here. Councilwoman Faircloth Staggers? Councilman Fletcher? Vice Mayor Guzman? Mayor Losner?
Here. Okay. This is in effect a continuation of a discussion on car number 3766, the old City Hall site redevelopment. In keeping with the format of the prior meeting, I don't recall the date, sometime in December. I think what we'll do is hear from our consulting team first, give us an update as to what has transpired as a result of our directives and what, from their perspective remains outstanding, and then we will hear from the related group and then open it up to questions and comments from council. Mr. Manager?
Thank you, Mayor. At the November 1st, 2022 special call, Council directed staff and related urban to come back with the development and ground lease agreements, which would include the following key items: hybrid revenue sharing model with a base rent and a waterfall provision, entire $9.1 million debt retirement upfront, and future revenue sharing for a refinance or sales transactions. At the December 14th, 2022 workshop, several items were negotiated and are included in the red line version of the Master Development Agreement and ground lease, which brings us to today. In your agenda packets, you have a Related's latest deal, as well as a summary from IMG Rebel. At this point, I'd like to turn it over to Sasha Page and Rick Liu from IMG Rebel to go ahead and bring council up to date.
Thank you very much, Jerry and City Council members. Rick and I will go through a brief presentation that summarizes the issues that we've seen. This should be familiar to most of you. It's largely similar to the presentation we gave you before, with some clerical changes. But most importantly, we've added a column in our presentation, as you'll see in the next slide, if you'd show that please, where it shows the response that we received as part of the conversation on December 14th, at which time the developer team made some statements and prepared a presentation, gave a presentation with certain responses to our conversations. We put that in that last column there. So I'll go through this briefly, and obviously happy to answer any questions. The first issue that we've had is the completion of phases. We were concerned that the developer would not complete all 3 phases, would just stop at phase 1, or that could be the possibility. Because phase 1 is primarily housing, where it's most profitable, and they would ignore or could potentially not build phase 2, which is the retail facilities. As was addressed on the 12-14 meeting, the developer indicated that they would simultaneously begin phase 1 and phase 2. So they have addressed that concern. However, they have not addressed the concern we raised that all of the infrastructure, the wet and dry infrastructure, would be built in phase 1, nor to reallocate the capitalized lease payments to reflect the fact that most of the residential units will be built in phase 1, and therefore the capitalized lease payments should reflect that. Number 2, the appraised value, as we discussed. We believe that the appraised value should reflect the most recent comparables-based appraisal that was discussed at the 12-14 meeting. And we also believe when the income-based appraisal comes in sometime later in January, that should also be considered as well. But at least the $12.3 million at a minimum should be incorporated into the transaction. Number 3 is the capitalized lease payments distribution. I've already talked about that. That reflects the fact that Phase 1 has more residential units, and therefore the capitalized interest payments should reflect roughly a 2/3, 1/3 allocation. And that would reflect also the most recent appraised value. If you please turn the slide to the next slide. Number 4 is the commencement of annual base payments. As we stated previously, we believe that they should begin at a date certain period, such as 6 months after the certain certificate of occupancy, and not to occur at the time when the stabilization metrics are reached. We had concerns about that. They raise a very high bar and are not market compared to other mixed-use, primarily of market-based housing, mixed-use projects. We did add in that, either it's the commencement at a date certain, or whatever revenues are there, 3% of those gross revenues should be paid. Neither of those items have been addressed in this response on 12/14 by the developer. In terms of milestone payments, we were concerned that the 3-year period that the developer has control over the site is unduly long, and therefore we recommended that 3-year period be reduced to 1 or 2 years. As occurred on the 12/14 meeting, the developer did say that they would reduce the timeline for milestone payments to 2 years. If you turn into the next slide, please, and my colleague Rick will take over.
For the record, Rick Liu. So just continuing on with the transaction issues, we've had a issue in the last time around escalation, where we believed the 2.75% that was offered by Related was too low, and we suggested 3 to 3.5% is closer to the market standard, or escalating by the CPI. Related has agreed to increase the escalation of the base payments to 3%. We also talked about a hybrid feature. As we had talked about the last time, we understand that Related is creating value on this property. We just want, as a city, to participate in the share of that increased value. And the way that is presented to us right now, there's that participation. If the property really goes gangbusters or does really well, which we hope will, is not being captured in any way by the city. So our suggestion would be to, in addition to the annual rent payments, that the developer could pay a gross revenue share of 1% net of their debt service, but not operating expenses, or the option 2, or which could be the cleaner way, if it works better for them, is that they would pay the greater of 3% gross revenue share or annual rent payments. The sale refinance capital event proceeds was something else we discussed. Throughout the holding period, it's expected that the developer or the owner will continue to refinance and or potentially sell certain parts of the property to others. We would want to also participate in some of the net proceeds. That's also fairly standard. What we had suggested was that the developer would pay the city 10 to 20% of these net proceeds from a refinancing or sale, where the net proceeds would be defined as the delta between the principal balance of the retired loan and the new loan, less any reasonable costs and expenses or maybe agreed upon repairs. The response from Related has been that they do accept the 10% capital events proceeds payment, but they have not accepted this suggested approach to the priority payments, where where the waterfall is such that the investors would still be paid an 8 to 12% before the city would get anything. And the reason why we suggested this solution is it's very difficult to know where the developer's returns are. We are not privy to their investor term sheets or commitments, and frankly, I don't think we want to be involved in the middle of that. We want to find a clean, executable solution that reduces administrative burden on the city, and that's easy to understand and enforce. You can move on to the next slide, please. The force majeure topic. Go back one, please. Thank you. The definition is unclear right now, and it still gives the developer a significant out. You can just sort of read what it says here. It should mean any strike or labor dispute, lockout, act of God, pandemics, other public health crises that impact development and inability to obtain labor or materials, riot, war, acts of terrorism. What we had suggested is to include a named tropical storm or a named hurricane. For starters, these would be sort of official, very disruptive types of events, not just a typical hurricane that are very, very minor one that would not be disruptive but could be potentially used as an out from the developer. And we had also taken out the language or an event of a similar nature as the one listed above that is beyond the reasonable control of the developer, so long that it has an identifiable impact on the project. This is just too broad of an out that, and it's not, and we do believe that's a business term that needs to be addressed. The responses so far, they have not accepted these suggested edits. Similarly, the termination for infeasibility. Right now, the developer is able to walk away from any of these phases that they deem infeasible. There doesn't need to be any sort of third-party evaluation, adjudication, whether or not it truly is infeasible. Effectively, it just needs to be infeasible to the developer. And there's not really enough controls or transparency for the city, to which point, that the city can actually, have any, have the developer on the hook or commitment to build what they say they were going to build. Our solutions have been to a payment from the developer for not completing one or more phases. We can figure out what that payment is. At the very minimum, it would be, reimbursement of, city costs, maybe with some additional premium, a remuneration from the developer for any land value diminution. So if phase one is built, it's possible that the value for the land on phase two and phase three is reduced. And right now there is no way to effectively compensate the city for that. To Sasha's earlier point is to require that infrastructure capacity for these phases be all built out, at the beginning, just to ensure that Related has skin in the game and that there's a real commitment to build all three of these phases. Related has agreed to simultaneous financial closing of phases 1 and 2, as mentioned earlier, or maybe not, it may be coming up next, but they have not accepted any of this suggested text. And then we'll move to the next slide, please. Thank you. We talked about a grocer the last meeting. I think Related has agreed to include a national or regional grocer in phase 2, with a regional grocer operating at least 3 states. And then the last 2 issues is a comparison of projects for these terms. Various different terms, but including the one that Sasha had just mentioned, related to things like stabilization. Related did present a roster of the projects they have completed using the structure, I think, that they had originally proposed to us, with a net cash flow basis. When we did, get a copy of that slide deck, and we did a little bit of research on these projects. The vast majority of the ones shown are all affordable, are public housing projects, many of them rental demonstration projects. and where the compensation structure is relatively different. A lot of it is driven by the developer fee, and the Miami-Dade County, with all those agreements, is paid through a share of the developer fee. The only exception to this is the recent one with the Gallery at West Brickell, where comparatively more of them are market rate housing. But we continue to believe, as your advisors, that the other Miami-Dade County transactions that we had mentioned in the past, like Douglas Row, Coconut Grove, Solomia, just those are as the ones just sort of being publicly available, where the majority of that program is market rate housing. They offer much more appropriate comparables to this, where the compensation and the cash flow and the waterfall, it's much more similar to what's being proposed at City Place than the previous related projects. And lastly, the net present value of the cash flows. Here we go. Yeah, here we are. Okay. We did our own calculation of the cash flows and the payments and the compensation that has been proposed by Related, our own net present value. I think for starters, we do believe that the discount rate should reflect a level of the risk in these cash flows being discounted. So for less risky cash flows like property taxes, these discount rates can reflect debt costs plus a buffer, like 5% or 5.5%. I think the analogy we would think about is if you had to issue public debt or issue a bond, could you take the revenues that Related is proposing and pledge those to a bond, and still be able to issue it at 5%? I think it's pretty clear that answer right now would be no. That reflects a much higher discount rate. So for riskier cash flows, such as the real estate project rent for a project that hasn't been built yet, or nor has it been committed to be built, we think the rates should be much higher. I think we somewhat generously think 7%. If we were to do a net present cash flow over 95 years, the total value of that compensation would be about $13 million, which is approximately, although just a hair higher than what the appraised value currently is at $12.83 million. If I got that correct. So I think that concludes our assessment of what we think the key issues are and our understanding of what the response from the developer is to date. We're here to answer any questions.
Hey, thank you all. I think what we'll do, unless there's some strenuous objection from council, I'd like to have the proposer both respond to the concerns you've raised and provide some explanation as to their position in opposition to your recommendations, and then we'll open it up to council for any further questions and comments. So, feel free to make notes while the proposer is on board. Good evening, Mr. Milo. Welcome.
Mayor and council members, and Albert Milo, President of Related Urban, and Happy New Year to everyone, and hopefully everyone had a good holiday season. Well, I think the best way is I'm gonna, kind of go through the presentation and address, all of the points again, and then if there's any subsequent questions from council, I'll gladly address those. So first, I have a video again that I want to show. So again, there you see a westward view of City Place Homestead, you know, kind of looking from Harris Field. And you see the entrance off of US 1 and everything and the view going westward on the project. As you know, we're proposing a mixed-use, Class A product with destination retail, just some of like our other city places. Some of the unique characteristics of the development is this will be the first Class A mixed-use development in the city of Homestead. You currently don't have any mixed use. You either have retail or you have residential, mostly suburban residential. This will be the first mixed income development in the city. It's projected to have the highest rents that any project is receiving here in the city. It's the way it's performing. It's the first mid-rise building. You don't have any product that exceeds 3 stories in the city of Homestead currently from a residential perspective. And it's the first project that'll have an activated rooftop and amenity area, as we showed in the video and in the renderings. It's going to include a world-class art facility, El Espacio Homestead. These are pictures of El Espacio in the city of Miami in the Alapata neighborhood. And again, just to reiterate, the benefit to this is that a facility such as this one, which is going to be founded and curated by my partner, Mr. George Perez, it puts the city as a major destination for world-class art events like Art Basel. And here you see in the last Art Basel, this was one of the main destinations of the whole art scene. And again, Art Basel is not a national event. This is a worldwide event. So much like, I sat here and I listened to the excitement of the council when it was race week because of all of the potential economic development and people coming to the city to spend money from NASCAR. This is even potentially bigger than that because it brings worldwide attention. We had committed to work with your 2 local institutions in this area of the city, the Homestead Center for the Arts, which again, they've not had a permanent home since they've been doing all the work that they've been doing in your community from the arts. And we committed to working and having incentive programs for our residents to work alongside and help promote events at your Seminole Theater. Again, and I think it's important because we seem to be, your consultants seem to be solely focused on, we have all of these major concerns and we have all of these things that, Related isn't doing. And so if we're going to be partners, it's important that we're communicating effectively, number one. Number two, it's important for us to try to find consensus, It's not about digging your head in the sand and your consultant saying, well, we want them to do A, B, C, and D, and they've done A and they've done B, but we're holding tight because they haven't done C and they haven't done D. Well, there's reasons why I can't do certain things, and we're going to touch upon those because, like I've told the council publicly and I've told the council privately, we're not going to tell you something that we can't be successful in doing. We've never done that. We've had a long track record of success in public-private partnerships, and that's because I would rather be under-promise you and over-deliver than over-promise you and under-deliver. And that's we're not gonna just tell you something just to make it sound good, or we're certainly not gonna be coerced by any consultant to do something that I know doesn't make financial sense or is not industry standard. So the essence of a public-private partnership, the essence is partnership. We have to work through these issues together, and that's why, yeah, we've had a bunch of workshops. Hopefully, we can address any final questions that the council may have today, and we can come back on a latter date, hopefully this month, and have an official vote on the project. The objective of the public-private partnership, again, is to work together and build consensus. The purpose and the benefit is to improve the community. And our goal has always been to create value, long-term value for our public partners. We touched on the letter. I gave you a letter from Miami-Dade County with all of the projects that we've executed with them. Again, as I mentioned the last time, there's 29 that have already closed, 22 of which are finished. And the letter confirms that the revenues that were promised to the county were met and/or exceeded. There's the list of projects. Again, $645 million worth of projects completed, $628 million worth of projects under construction, and over $1 billion in projects in the pipeline that have already been awarded to us by Miami-Dade County. We're a vertically integrated company, and again, the benefit of that is that we're able to weather the storm exactly in markets like we are today, where interest rates are volatile, insurance rates are volatile, construction costs are volatile. All those things are volatile, but we understand as long-term, developers that we have to be able to build not just when everything is perfect and the weather outside is perfect. You got to be able to build and work through when there's a little bit of stormy weather. And the benefit we have is that we're not just a development company and we're subject to or at the mercy of a general contractor or a management company. No, we have those own divisions, so we're able to work collectively together. We have economies of scale, and we're able to deliver for our public partners. Some of the banks, all of the national banks that we deal with throughout the country, I actually have some recommendation letters from some of the banks that I will give to the council just so you can see our financial strength with some of the largest lenders in the country. So it's not about promising you something. It's about something that we've been able to do, and we have the financial backing of the large banks in the country to be able to do this project. So I will pass this out to council. Again, as was mentioned, and as we agreed to at the last workshop, we're amenable to constructing and closing on phases 1 and 2. I know that was a concern of several of you. We've already agreed to that, and it's in the document. So phase 1 will consist of 376 units, along with retail, and phase 2 is the grocer and additional retail, and the park. So all of that will be built as one phase, and the agreement already reflects that concession. Here's a picture of the rendering of the entrance off of Campbell Drive, so you get the feel. This is a product that doesn't exist in the city today, where you have a mix of uses. Total build-out, including phase 3, is 596 units, some additional retail in phase 3 facing US 1, and a subsequent parking garage where all of the phases can then park, and in addition to some surface parking areas. This is a shot of the main plaza area, kind of in the center of the development. And some of you that have seen the Doral, this is kind of like the event space area in the center of the event. You can have tree lightings, you can have events, you can have other type of functions here in this part of the development. your consultant was talking about net present value and trying to find a way to not say that we are paying you appraised value, because at the last workshop, we were presented, or a couple days before the last workshop, we were presented with like, hey, the city's got a new appraisal. It came in for $12.3 million, and we think that you guys should be paying appraised value. And I'm going to touch on that because they keep harping on that. So if you look at the income streams that we're proffering, what is rent? Rent is a compilation of the capitalized lease payment, which is paid up front, and the annual payments, which are paid through the life of the lease. And I broke it down for you on every phase, okay? First phase is $107.8 million in actual payments. When you discount that, there you see the net present value of the income stream, and when you add that to the capitalized lease payment, phase one alone is paying you the value of your current appraised value. And I did the same exercise for phase two, and I did the same exercise for phase three. So this is broken down. There's no magic here. It's a simple calculation. Take your capitalized lease payment, take your total revenue, apply a net present value factor, and that's what it is. So this shows it to you a little easier. Total payments to the city, all rent, all capitalized lease payments, $193.5 million. Apply a net present value calculation to that, $24.3 million. That's twice your appraised value. So this concept, or this, idea that Related is not paying appraised value for the property is incorrect. We're actually paying twice the amount of your appraised value. And there was a question earlier as to, well, we should get value, and then we should get all these other things because our appraisal is this, and that should be paid as a capitalized lease payment. In a traditional real estate transaction, and I know we have several members of the board here in real estate, if you're selling your property and you have an appraisal and you tell your buyer, hey, I have this value and my property is worth $100,000, and the buyer pays you $100,000, you close, deal's over. What we're saying is we're paying you in excess of that, and your consultants are saying, hey, pay us value, you need to capitalize payment, pay me value, and in addition to value, give me A, B, C, D. If I did those type of deals, I wouldn't be a developer standing here and talking to this council today because I'd be bankrupt. I'd be bankrupt. Total value of the project, as far as costs, almost $230 million. And again, direct payments, $193 million. So total value between economic value and direct payments to the city, $422 million of total value in this project for the city. Guarantees, because you seem to hear like, well, the developer has no skin in the game. The developer can walk away. The developer is not promising anything of value. Let's talk about the guarantees. They're in the document. We gave you a guaranteed income stream. There was concern originally when we proposed this deal to the city. We had a 15% revenue share participation. There was a lot of debate and concern of like, well, we're going to get 15%. Homestead has a history of not getting a fair shake on things. We thought we were going to get X dollars, and we ended up not getting X. And there was a lot of concern. And I said, look, that's a valuable approach because you ride with the full upside of the development. And it seemed to be that the will of the council was like, no, we want to put our finger on something. We want something that's guaranteed. That's what we have now. We have a guaranteed income stream payment for each phase, and we included an annual escalator, which was one of the concerns that your consultant raised. We have agreed for a $400,000 financial contribution to settle the city's lawsuit for something that's been in the works for years. Has nothing to do with City Place Homestead. It has nothing to do with Related Urban. But we made that concession. We were asked to do that. To what? To be a good partner and help the city out. It's in there. It's been there. We're posting payment and performance bonds for every phase. Guaranteed by what? Guaranteed by our balance sheet. So what does that give you? It gives you an assurance that the project's going to get completed and it's going to get built on time and on schedule. Because if it doesn't, they come after us. We're giving you corporate guarantees, again, that construction, once we close, will get built. We've never defaulted on a project. And again, I'm going to hand you the letters from our lenders. You have a partner that has the ability to start and finish. We are proffering, we advance capitalized lease payments if there's any delays. We put milestone payments that were requested to be shortened from 3 years to 2 years. We did that. It's in the document. And we're committing to invest in your community in El Espacio Homestead. So those are things that are in there, embedded already in your document. Let's talk about concessions, because again, your consultant continues to focus on trying to talk about things that are outstanding concerns. Let's talk about all the things that we've agreed to. And let's try to, again, have a fair and balanced discussion, not just Related's not doing this. We agreed to simultaneous closing of phase 1 and phase 2. Your attorneys have already drafted that. It's in the documents that are here, part of this agenda item. We agreed to increase the annual escalator from 2.75 to 3%. That increased the revenue for the city from $175 million to $193.5 million. Again, it's in your document. We agreed to reduce the timeline for the milestone payments from 3 years to 2 years. It's in the document. We agreed to capital event proceeds payment of 10%. It was originally, there wasn't any. That's already been incorporated into your document. We agreed to start the annual rent payment 6 months after stabilization instead of 12 months, which was the way it was originally drafted. That's also in your document. We agreed to explore adding commercial and/or office space to the development at the request of a few of the members of the council. That's been incorporated into the document, and we agreed to add a national or regional grocer. And again, you can portray it as we had, all of these requests. Your consultant says, I had all of these requests. Related's not agreeing to this, this, and this. Look at all the things we agreed to. I mean, I think it's a little bit unreasonable to assume that you're going to ask us for 10 things and we're going to agree to all 10 things in the way that you ask us to do that. I think that's a little bit of an unreasonable request. But look at the things we have agreed to. So we have made a lot of progress. And again, I'm not going to stand up here and promise something to the council because it's asked of us that I know I can't produce or can't deliver on. It's just not going to happen. And with that, I'll conclude my presentation for now. And I'll take questions. I will hand out here now your, some of the reference letters from some of the lenders that we deal with, some of the largest lenders in the country.
Thank you, Mr. Milo. Other than Councilman Roth and myself, which members of council did not have the opportunity to speak at our last session. Seems like there was one or two others of you who did not have the opportunity to weigh in as we ran out of time. Councilman Fletcher? Okay, very good. Thank you, sir. And what I would like to do then is first defer to the members who did not have the opportunity to speak at the last session to bring them to the head of the line. Councilman Roth, are you prepared to go forward? Sure, please.
Thank you, Mayor. And the last 3-4 weeks, I've really been studying this project, and I felt it would be a good exercise, and I put together a video that I'd like to show all of us. And if you can start that video, please, and then I have comment afterwards.
Thank you.
We've got 50,000 square feet of ground floor retail. On the residential side, it is a Class A residential market rate building. We actually have 336 units. On the rental side, we added 100 units for the home ownership piece. We've got 13 live-work units, and we have 6,000 square feet of gallery space and of tech incubator space. We've got an acre and a half of what we're calling the Central Park, which is the main spine of the development, 837 parking spaces. We've got 4 5,000 square foot restaurant spaces, including rooftop dining. And our hotel component, we added a rooftop lounge, and it includes the 10,000 square feet of conference space that we had previously mentioned. Here is a breakdown of the actual residential. You know, we're under 30 units an acre. It's actually 26 units an acre. Again, 336 rental units, 100 home ownership units. There's a breakdown between the unit types, and more importantly, you see our home ownership piece is intended to be all 2-bedroom units, about 1,000 square feet to be sold as condominiums. On the retail side, again, we talked about we have 50,000 square feet of ground floor retail, and there you see some of the lifestyle shots and the type of retail amenities that we're proposing. The 4 restaurants, you know, strategically located on the perimeter side, the larger ones, some on the corner of Campbell and US 1, and the other ones facing US 1, one within the ground floor of the hotel. So those are the larger restaurant spaces. Any other smaller uses like an ice cream shop or things of that nature, smaller, would be in the ground floor retail facing Central Park. Hotel, again, the idea is to do, you know, we heard different concepts of hotel that in some of our discussions, we heard that there's also a need for a little bit of an extended stay component. We made that modification, and it could be, you know, more for extended stay that can serve the base and other uses in the area that sometimes you don't want a traditional hotel room, which you don't have a kitchen or a kitchenette to be able to stay for a longer period of time.
What's the bottom line yearly, income-wise, to the city? Your estimate would be $1.3 million per year for 99 years, basically.
That's correct.
All right.
Plus $8 million at closing to
Plus
retire
$8
the
million
city's
to
debt.
relieve the debt, correct. Okay, great, thank you. What's the bottom line yearly, income-wise, to the city?
$1,634,000 out of the gate. That grows, again, 10 years, you're already at $3 million. 20 years, you're almost double. That's the power of compounding.
What's the bottom line yearly, income-wise, to the city?
Phase 1 goes from $200,000 in year 1 to $260,000 in year 10. So here's an aerial view of the proposed site plan. On the further top section, on the left, is the hotel and office and conference space area, which is in the connecting parcel that is just to the north of the city's power plant. And then as you come towards the right and cross east on Northeast First Road there, you see our parking structure and the yellow, I guess it's inverted C with the angle there is phase 1. That's intended to be, again, 324 units with 9 live-work units in that phase. Just to the right of that, you see all the green space there, that's the Central Park with the plaza and the water feature in the middle as a prominent feature. And as you see, it also aligns directly with the street that goes diagonal to US 1. Also, and you cross our main entrance, and phase 2 is proposed as, retail on the bottom with residential on top there on that second phase. And then moving southward of the main entrance off of US 1, it's hard to see there, but it should show as pink on your screen there, is the proposed grocery store with a garage up top and liner units. And then towards the bottom left side in the L-shaped building is the proposed phase 3. And as you can see, and it's hard to depict here because where you see all the circles, that's all of the green areas and all of the trees. There's, we're working towards preserving a lot of those mature trees on site. And so all those areas that kind of show around the trees as white will all be green space. So you see by producing this type of height, which is up to 8 stories in habitable space, it allowed us to open up and have a little bit more open and green space area. So on the programmatic side, you see the numbers there on the side. We have about 27,000 square feet of regular retail, almost 2,400 and change for micro retail for those small businesses that we talked about last time. Not every business is going to be a big national chain. So we wanted to have some of that opportunity to create entrepreneurship and business for real small businesses. About 9,300 square feet of restaurant space, and we have some reserved space, as we always said, for some specific homestead nonprofits. We've included a grocery store, almost 38,000 square feet. Again, an office component with a hotel component and conference space on the phase 4 parcel. A total of 655 mixed income units, 9 live work units on phase 1 facing Campbell on the north side. About 2,200 and change square feet for the gallery space that we want as part of the project. And the Central Park area is a little bit over an acre as currently designed. And we're proposing about 950 parking spaces. And the full build out, again, hasn't changed except the fact that we're going to do phase 1 and 2 together. So when phase 3 is done, same, 46,000 square feet of retail, 19,000 square foot grocer. We have the Espacio and the other commercial retail, 596 units, the park, the police substation, and a parking garage. We are embarking on a partnership with the city to be the pioneers and bring a product that doesn't exist today. So in a partnership, we have to be balanced and we have to share.
So the reason I put this video together was to show where we started at and where we're at today. And when you look at this slide here, the first meeting, we were at a total of $638 million in total financial benefits to the city, with 464 million financial benefit directly to the city, and then the construction costs. The second meeting in March, it went to $1.4 billion. That was a huge number, with $1.16 billion directly affecting the city of Homestead. And then the third one is what is currently today, which is $422 million and the $193 million to the city. So when you look at the progression of the inspiring, beautiful, proffered presentation we saw in November before the HTG group classically bowed out of this process, we had a whole lot of exciting things happening on the property. And I'm just going to go through some of the notes I took just to reiterate what we just saw. The November 21st meeting, we started with 336 rental units, and we also had a pride and ownership homeowner units of 100 that were going to be built there. So there was pride and ownership in a community. 4 or 5 months later in March, the number of residential units went from 336 to 655 units. And the 100 pride and ownership units vanished. They were eliminated, never spoken about again. The December meeting, the residential units changed from the 655 to a final number at this point of 596 units. Let's talk about some of the amenities that were offered in the really great presentation in November of 21, which I think we all can agree was exciting and we all look forward to seeing built on the corner. The one that stuck out to me was the 4 5,000 square foot restaurant spaces, including rooftop dining. Gone. In March of 22, the restaurant space that was indicated was reduced to 9,318 square feet from 20,000 square feet of restaurant space. No mention of rooftop dining. In the December meeting, there was no mention of restaurant space at all or rooftop dining. In the great presentation in November of 21, there was a hotel, 76 rooms, with 10,000 square feet of conference space on US 1, including a rooftop lounge. In March of 22, it became an office hotel, down from 76 rooms to 65 rooms, but they increased the office space to 24,000 square feet, but moved it to a location that was unusable. In December of 22, no more mention of the hotel, the conference center, or the rooftop lounge. Gone. Central Park. In November of 21, I was like, wow, we're going to have a Central Park here. 60,000 square foot Central Park. That's nice. In March, it was reduced from 60,000 square feet down to 45,000 square feet. In December, it was increased back to 60,317 square feet. However, there's a conflict with the development agreement. In the development agreement, on both page 7 and 37, it only mentions a Central Park of not 60,000 square feet, of not 45,000 square feet, but of 34,731 square feet. We talked about, one more, was the grocery store concept that, and wasn't talked about in December, was brought forward in March. The grocery store was scheduled to be 37,768 square feet. In the December presentation, it was down to 19,378 square feet. The video showed me asking the question, what's the bottom line to the city of Homestead? HTG proposed $1.3 million plus relieving our debt. Related proposed $1.634 million, relieving our debt. The power of competition. Once HTG withdrew their proposal, leaving us with no ability to choose from one or the other, Related was the only option at that time. With no competition, the proposed and proffered deal began to change every time we met. Things were removed to the dismay of what we were presented in November of 21. And again, I reiterate, what I saw in 2021, I liked a lot. What I see today is nothing in comparison to what we were presented, what we were pitched, and what we all fell in love with. The amount of rent that is being proffered today, the video only showed one portion of it, the $200,000 escalating to 260,000 10 years later. The original offer was 1.634 million. In 10 years, it would be 3 million. It would double in 20 years. That's the power of compounding. That's not what we have today. 354,000 a year, which will only start when they finish the build-out and transition to stabilization, and we still have to wait 6 months to receive any rental proceeds. That's not a fair deal to the city. It's not a fair deal to the citizens of the city. Two members asked at a previous meeting about the occupancy level at City Place. Mr. Milo proclaimed they're at 100% occupancy. Does Related own any residential property at City Place? Your mic's not on, sir.
Really? Old, the building.
Okay. How much did you sell that building for?
I'm not privy to that information, and I don't have that in front of me.
And what was the name of the development?
What was the what?
What was the name of the complex?
What was the name
Was it
of
the Flats?
the
Was-
flats, I believe, yeah.
Okay, so the Flats, according to the county record, sold for $100 million. Okay,
Okay?
so it's not that you're not privy to say it.
No.
It's a part of the county record, and that's what it showed. It was sold for $100 million.
I'm not
We'll go
debating
on.
that. I'm
We'll go
just
on.
telling you, I can't give you something I don't know, but if you say it's 100 million and you looked it up, then it's 100 million.
Right. Okay, so according to the websites for the Flats and for the Manor is also part of City Place, or is relatively close to City Place, is that right?
Behind it.
It's behind, it's right there. You
It's
can
not
walk
part
from
of City Place, but it's close, but it's not part of City Place,
But
but
you can
yes,
walk
go
from the
on.
Manor to City Place.
Come again?
You can walk from the Manor to City Place.
Yes, but it's not part of City Place.
I understand. And that was something you built,
Yes, sir.
and you sold that one too.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Can you tell me how much you sold it for?
I don't have that information. It was Steve Patterson's division, not Albert Milo's division.
Gotcha.
But I'm sure you looked it up on the public record, so I'm sure you can enlighten us.
$135 million. Okay, that was 398 units, and the Flats were 303 units. Now, on the website, and this goes to some of the compensation package that you've offered us at 95% occupancy. The question was asked a couple meetings ago, what is the occupancy of City Place Doral? And you said 100%,
Typically.
high 90s.
High 90s, yeah.
Okay. On their website, they list all their available units that they have as a marketing tool, right? Okay. According to the number of units that are vacant, not showing the ones that are in a make-ready mode, okay, they're at 92 and 91% occupancy rate, respectively. Okay. Based on that, the city would not be getting paid.
That's not correct, but I'll let you finish and
Based
I'll
on your
address.
agreement at 95% occupancy, it would not. And the other thing to think about also is even after stabilization is reached, how long is it going to take to rent 596 units? That's something for us to think about as far as compensation goes to the city. All right? So, from the beautiful presentation I saw, we all saw, in November, everything has been reduced and only beefed up the bottom line of the developer at this point. We no longer have the iconic attraction. We have some retail space. We have some commercial space. We have a art museum that is being proffered. The only thing that has occurred is the city has been diminished in all aspects of this deal. The citizens don't have an iconic place to go to. They don't have any rooftop activities, no rooftop lounge. They have nowhere to gather in a conference setting. They have no way to bring people together at this location that's supposed to be an iconic attraction. And I want to remind us of a few things that have happened in the past. and this one's pretty recent, and it's to think about compensation to the city of Homestead. All of us last year approved a lease of city property of approximately 15,000 square feet building. You may remember that was Les Jardins. And Les Jardins, after negotiating successfully with our staff, is paying the city $250,000 a year to lease 15,000 square feet. We're only getting $200,000 in phase one, $25,000 in phase two, another $125,000 in phase three. 8 years down the road, maybe, if it gets built. Something to think about. Before my time on council, I think my colleague Fairclough Staggers was here. The city had a property on US 1, 5 acres, known as the old bowling alley. We had aggressive people come to us, and the best you're ever going to get for that property is $500,000. Well, they backed out of that deal of $500,000. City sold it for $2.319 million. We held out for the best deal we could get for the city. We didn't settle for what was being proffered today. We have options. We don't have to settle. We can agree to allow staff to discontinue negotiations and start the process of an RFP. As a council up here today, after all of these talks and negotiations, we know now what we want on this corner. I don't think it's what we see here today. I don't think it's 596 residential units with a 50,000 square foot of retail and 20,000 square foot of art museum. I don't think that that's what we envisioned there. We envisioned excitement. We envisioned sex appeal. We envisioned an attraction. We could give staff direction tonight to discontinue this course, have another workshop, get all of our questions, concerns, wants, asks, prepare an RFP, and go out and ask the world what they'll give the city of Homestead to develop that property, not settle for what is being offered today. Our staff, our attorneys, our consultants that aren't even here tonight, they're via video, our consultants struggle to find anything good with the financial deal structure that has been presented to us. That should be a red flag. We brought them in to help us navigate this contract. This is not a good deal for the city. The consultants, as reserved as they are, as professional as they are, won't come out and say, this is a bad deal. I can say that, based on what I've seen, based on my lifetime of experiences, and based on my responsibility to seek the best possible deal in all ways for the city of Homestead. This is not a good deal financially for us. This is not a good deal for the citizens of the city. When you add 600 units to an area that's already congested, this is not adding any amenities to the community, to the people that live in this city, by way of entertainment, by way of the rooftop experiences, the lounge, rooftop dining. There's nothing for them to do there. The Central Park has been reduced. It doesn't show in the slides, but it shows in the agreement. And I think that we need to just take a pause, end this, and begin the RFP process. And the related group would be invited to join that process. Because I believe the way that this process has gone out has been very intrusive in my life and everybody else's life. And this is not the way an RFP works. This is not an RFP, okay? In an RFP, the developers can't talk to us. There's a cone of silence. They have to negotiate directly with the city and the attorneys. And if the consultants want to be a part of that, they can be a part of that too. And I think that we are selling short ourselves, the citizens of the city, if we do not end this process and go out, prepare the RFP with staff, and let the world tell us how valuable they think the city of Homestead is to them. Thank you, Mayor, for my time.
Thank you, Councilman Roth, and I think there are a couple items during your presentation. Mr. Milo wants to respond or clarify some of the issues you raised. Mr. Milo?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So you touched upon the November presentation, and let me first clarify the reason why Housing Trust Group quit.
First of all, I don't want to hear
No.
from you why somebody quit,
Oh.
okay?
I
I don't want to hear from you why somebody exited the
I'm going to give you
process.
my professional opinion why
It
they
doesn't
quit.
matter
Well, it does.
what your opinion is.
You raised
You
it for
cannot speak for
competition.
HTG.
No.
Please do not do that.
No.
Thank you.
You mentioned HTG, and you mentioned the fact that they pulled out of the process, and therefore there's no competition, and due to that fact that you're getting an inferior deal. So I just want to clarify for the record that, and you obviously are well-versed on public records. I just asked you to do a public record search and see one project that HTG has built that is mixed use. That's all I'm saying. Okay? They don't have the development experience for the type of development that was proffered. So let's talk about the changes in the presentation. You talked about different changes of units, homeownership going away, hotel going away, different units going up, different changes. Absolutely, there's been changes. And those changes have been the result of the dialogue that I've had with the council and trying to respond to some of that dialogue and trying to find that consensus. So there's no doubt that we've had changes on the plan. We've never hidden that. We've proposed. You showed the video. We went and we said, this is what it was, this is what we changed, and we've gone through the process. We're going through it today as part of the workshop process. You're giving me input today. Last workshop, there was some things that the council asked. I just showed we conceded to a few things. So absolutely there's been changes. Now, as far as the revenue that you're mentioning, I stood here today and I stand here and tell you the same thing I told you back then. Will the city make more revenue if you had a revenue participation agreement instead of a fixed annual payment? Absolutely. But it was this council's decision to say, we're not comfortable with a revenue share agreement. So we proffered that. We proffered a 15% revenue share agreement. So when you run those numbers, that's what it was based on.
Correct. And let me stop you with that thought. So in those negotiations with the 15% net income to the city, the way it was structured, there were no guarantees that the city was going to receive a dollar. So you can say one thing the way you want to say it when it comes to the compensation amount, but when you made that statement of $1.634 million back in November, okay, based on net of revenue. And today you come in to tell us that you're going to only give us $354,000. Okay? How do you calculate that? Because in reality, if you think that you're going to be making that much more every year
Yep.
on the net side, then why not settle for $1 million a year to the city at 3%?
That's an excellent point. Let's talk about that. What was the 10-year T-bill in November of 21? I'll tell you what it was in December of 21.
Yeah, it was like
one-
1.857. I get it.
Huh?
It was like 1.857.
No, it was like 1.59.
Okay, so it was pretty low.
Right, pretty low. What is it today?
About 3.6, 3.5.
Right. What does that have to do? How does that
But
affect?
but understand something.
No.
Please understand where I'm coming from.
Yeah.
Marlo, okay? I'm the landlord,
Yep.
right? It doesn't matter to me how much it costs you. It matters to me is how much are my citizens in the city of Homestead going to receive for the most valuable piece of property in the city. If you can't do it, then don't do it. But it's got to be fair to the city. It cannot be one-sided. You mentioned it, and I showed it on purpose in the end of that video. First of all, this is not a public-private partnership, okay? This is a landlord-tenant relationship, all right? But you said a partnership has to be balanced
Yes.
and sharing.
Yes.
Okay, so let me ask you this question. If we give you this piece of paper today that says you can develop 596 units and 70,000 square feet of retail space, and you just take that piece of paper and you sell it to another developer, which the way this agreement is set up, you can't. And you sell it to that developer for, let's say, $150 million, okay? The city gets $15 million from that transaction.
The completed deal, you mean?
What's
You mean
that?
the completed development?
No, you just take that piece of paper I handed you today that says you have the rights to do all that stuff now, right? And just say, look, I don't want to build, Mr. whoever down the street, would you like to take on this project? Here, it's $100 million. You go do the project.
Prior to building it?
Yeah.
That's not allowed in the document.
Well, it could happen though, right?
It's not allowed in the
you-
document.
Okay, I'm just using it as an example.
No, but it's
I'm
not a
using-
valid example.
all right,
It's
but I'm
not
using
allowed
it-
in the document.
I'm using it as an example. So 10 years down the line, you have everything built out, and then you sell it,
Yes.
okay? You sell it for $150 million,
Minus my debt and all of my equity, yes,
and the city gets 15% or 10%, whatever the number is, right?
of the spread.
Right, but that's not a partnership.
But how is it not a partnership, Councilman? I'm taking the risk. I have the debt. I have the equity. I'm the one building
Yeah,
the
but
project.
we're-
I'm the one building the value.
But we're left with rent. That's all we get is rent.
No.
If we can't negotiate good rent now, we can't get good rent later in life because
Yeah,
we can't
but that-
change that deal.
That's not true.
It is true.
It's not true because I'm paying you a capitalized lease payment up front.
But you broke that down into 3 payments now, too.
Yeah, but I'm paying you a capitalized lease payment. I'm paying you rent, and I'm giving you a share of the upside. Listen, let's put it. Let me ask the question a different way, right? We're a for-profit developer. Do you think that if we had the ability to sell or the desire to sell, do you think we would try to sell for more money or less money?
More money, of course.
More money. So I am inherently, if I have an investment and I feel it warrants, to sell that investment, I'm giving you a share of that upside after I created the value for you. So, your own consultant said, hey,
Listen, I understand what my consultants say, and
so
all
we're
I can do
giving
is
you
all I
that.
can do is suggest and ask, right? And all you have to do is say no.
And we agreed. We didn't agree to their final percentage, but we agreed to the concept.
Right.
So it's almost like you're saying, hey, take the risk, create this value, but you know what? We should be incentivized to make as much money as possible in there, right? That's why I offered you a revenue share deal. That's why all my county deals have a revenue share participation.
Yeah, but the county deal is totally different. That's all housing. There's no mixed
I'm
use.
just-
There's none of that other stuff. That's all subsidized housing. So that
No,
has
it's
nothing-
not.
It's all affordable housing.
It's not.
It's workforce housing. It's whatever you want to call it.
It is not.
So you have market rate rent in there too.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. So I offered you a full ride with a full participation of all the upside in this deal.
Okay.
And I believe you were the one that said exactly what you just restated. Hey, I'm a landlord, tenant, landlord. I just want to know what I can put my finger on as far as revenue. And that's a valid question in that. I go, well, if you want to take less risk because you want to know more specificity, then you got to go the guaranteed payment route. You go the guaranteed payment route, it is ultimately less dollars gross. I'm not debating that. I've said that from day one. If the city took that document and changed the rent payment to a participation payment like I proffered originally in my proposal, would you make more money? Absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay, you have any more comments on my stuff? That's all, thanks.
Thank you, Councilman. Vice Mayor, I know you wanted to speak.
Oh, I do have one more comment. Because you raised the point about occupancy and 92% and not getting to 95%. And, you know, again, I just want to dispel this myth of a ghost out there of somehow that Related is going to purposefully keep the project below 95% to not have to pay rent. Because I think that's the inherent concern. And I gave you some of the letters there from our lenders. In our projects, we proffer forward commitments from Fannie Mae or Freddie Mac. What's that mean? That means that I have a construction loan, which I already showed you. We're going to post a payment and performance bond, and we're going to have a corporate guarantee to complete construction. Once we complete construction, we already have a takeout loan from Fannie or Freddie that says we will lend you X dollars. They're committed to that. It's a forward commitment to take out our construction loan. So this notion of we're going to not reach stabilization, so therefore we don't have to pay rent, we would be in default of our loan. So that would be against everything that we have to do. Why? Because we have a guarantee on the construction. We have to get off of that guarantee. If not, we would have problems. So there's no mythical concept. It's part of the Freddie Mac docs. You have to hit those thresholds. You stabilize. We've got the money guaranteed at closing, and that's our takeout loan. So there's no risk there in that regard, because I keep hearing, hey, you guys are not going to get stabilized. If we don't get stabilized, we're in default. Again, we're a for-profit entity. So are we incentivized to make money or to be in default? We're incentivized to get projects over the finish line and be successful.
Vice Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor. To city staff, do we have a rough estimate of how many 99-year ground leases we currently have now? A rough estimate? Would that be less than 5, more than 5?
I would say 0.
All right. Thank you. I'd like to first say that it's an extremely complex structure, deal structure, when it comes to a 99-year lease, right? So I agree with a lot of what Councilman Roth has said. I don't think the deal structure financials are the true value of what that property is worth. And I have struggled with putting these figures into a valuation model so that I could truly understand exactly what the value of that property is, the way it has been presented to us, you know. So I went as far as seeking help from an economist. I wanted to hear an economist say exactly what is going on in the current market today, right? So I listened to economist Jeffrey Hasvey he's a Moody's economist, and Moody's is a very well-respected company. And they give us the economic trends and forecasts that are happening today. So you might say, are we currently in a recession? You would say no, not yet. But what is the definition of a recession? Is when you have 2 consecutive quarters that you're declining your GDP. So we were in a recession the summer of 22. We just came out. But what's happening in the current market today, we all know that inflation currently is at 7.1%. The feds are likely going to continue increasing interest rates, and they're going to increase them probably February 1st. And they increase them, 0.75 basis points, and they do, 50 basis points, and they come down to 3 basis points. But that inflation, that interest rate increase is going to continue to increase until inflation comes down to 3%, which makes that harder for you to acquire financing. Now, these letters that you give us from your lenders can state something today, but when the economy changes, the Fed creates certain regulations that hinder the way they are going to lend money, right? When we look at the capital markets today, you're going to see rent spikes. You're going to see transactions begin to stall. You're going to have a pause from the banks, and they're going to just say, hey, we're not lending the way we were lending in the past. Florida has a huge issue with insurance. The way the insurance market is today, it's got tremendous problems. And even though, they had a current session to try to fix that issue, they just put a Band-Aid over it right now. So these costs are also going up. You've got geopolitical events that have an impact on economies. They have an impact on markets. The Ukraine war created supply chain issues all throughout the world, especially here in the U.S. So what Councilman Roth said is that we've been going through a lot of back and forth with things changing drastically from the way it's presented one day to the way it's presented today. I agree with his analogy of competition. So what happens is we're thinking about doing a 99-year lease when we have a very, very unstable regulatory situation when it comes to interest rates, inflation, markets. It doesn't make me feel good going into such a deal when nothing seems to be concrete, nothing seems to stay the same. I don't think the numbers of this particular project, again, reflect the true value of that property. Great analogy what you did with Le Jardin. 15,000 square feet, they're paying $215,000 a year. I think I did ask the question in the past. I don't need you to answer it now, but I did ask the question, how did you come up with those figures? What was the analogy? What was the formula used to come up with, $200,000 phase 1 for annual payments, $25,000 phase 2, $137 or 49 for phase. I don't know how those things came up. I've been wrecking my brain trying to figure that out, and I've never been able to get there. I know that $1 today is worth more than $1 tomorrow. If we do a deal, a ground lease deal for 99 years, there is going to be constant urban-related coming to the city saying we need to amend, we need to change because of whatever's happening in the markets. And at the end of the day, we are going to be left holding the bag of nothing. That's how I feel about this deal structure. So I agree with Councilman Roth in everything he said, and I think we should stop negotiating this deal, and we should reconsider based on the way the current markets, the way the markets are today. There are too many unknowns for us to do a 99-year ground lease. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. Mr. Marlowe?
So I think all of the points that you raised, Vice Mayor, are valid points as it relates to some of the headwinds out there in the economy. But seasoned developers know how to navigate through those headwinds. So I could have easily gone the route of some of the other deals that were proffered, not too far from the old City Hall there on US 1. There were some good large-scale developments that were planned, and now those have been pulled. Many of them are trying to come to us to purchase the property. And to be frank with you, we're hesitant because we want to make sure, not because of the market, because again, we know how to build in up markets and down markets, but because we want to make sure that we are comfortable investing our capital in the city of Homestead. And
I think the margin of safety that you are inserting so that when you navigate through the headwinds, it's at the expense of the residents of the city of Homestead, which I don't think it should be that way.
So let me ask you this question. And we were going back and forth on value. Do you think it's better for Just Related Urban to do a deal with the city at appraised value, write you a check, own the fee simple, you get your check, and we go on our merry way? Is that better?
That would be something to consider. That would be something to consider. Because again, I think $1 today is worth more than $1 tomorrow. But then what is your opinion of appraised value compared to my opinion of appraised value?
I've shared it with you. But I did. I shared you my income stream and my net present value calculation. But I also said, and I'll say it again today, that if it is the will of this council to contemplate a fee simple transaction with us, that we will consider that on your proposed value.
Me personally, an income approach to appraised value, I'm willing to consider that.
Not an income approach face value, because you don't have an income producing property. You have a vacant piece of land.
I've got a piece of land where I can request an appraisal to give me his opinion, regardless if it's a sales approach, income approach. But at the end of the day, I'm going to say, this is what I think this property is worth, because there's a lot of other factors based on where it's at, based on the traffic that goes by there. A lot of things that you could ask the 7 of us up here what they think the value is, and you'll probably get 7 different answers.
But to my point, there are 3 other parcels on US 1 of similar size that had projects planned, and they've pulled those projects off. So you, as the seller, I can't tell you what to ask for your property, right? You're in real estate.
Right.
Sometimes you present to a seller and you do your analysis of a property, and you sit with the seller and you say, look, I think your house is worth $200,000. And if you were to list it, I would suggest, Mr. Seller, that you list it for $200,000. But you might have a difficult seller that says, no. I think my property is worth $300,000. You'd be reluctant to list it because you know it's going to be hard for you to sell it. And you would try to convince your seller to list it closer to what you think you can sell it for. But again, I can't tell the city what to ask for their property. The city can consider that. The city could say, hey, look, I think if you bought it, it's worth this. I have the right to say yay or nay. But I'm just telling you that we proposed it as a land lease deal. The fact that there's different issues in the economy, that's not really a risk factor long term. That's a risk factor to starting a property, if anything. And that's why I mentioned the difference to the T-bill of the interest rates of where they were to where they are now. But if the question again is, you rather have $1 today so you don't have risk, then we could consider a simpler fee simple transaction for the property once the entitlements are approved.
There's also, you're aware that people investors pay in addition to appraised value because they see value in the property and they go ahead and purchase the property in addition to appraised value when there's competition.
Yeah, I would say that those are not the smartest investors. I would leave it at that. I would say that that's not a practice that is going to give you a long-term successful track record in the development business. Because if you pay $5 for something that's worth $3, eventually you'll be bankrupt, or you might be like FTX.
Right. Right. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. And Councilman Fletcher, I know you've been patiently waiting, but before we get any further out in the weeds or go down the wrong road, I want to pose a procedural question to the attorneys, because I'm afraid we might, clearly we're going to come to this at some point. This was advertised and is framed as a workshop.
Yes.
So what constraints are upon us tonight in terms of making motions or taking any type of final action?
Well,
You kind of put this in perspective of what, I mean, go ahead.
I think what staff would be looking for tonight out of the workshop is direction from the council to pursue one avenue or the other. If it's moving forward and putting an agreement on the agenda with whatever stipulations you add, that would be an avenue. If it was going the other direction or, you know, negotiate a sale, whatever, I think that's what we're looking for at this point. You know, based on the,
But either way, tweaking the agreement that's before us, pursuing an outright sale, or terminating negotiations would all need to be placed on the next council agenda and formally acted on then. Is that correct?
Well, if staff is the first two, yes, you couldn't approve a sale tonight. It hasn't been noticed. We don't, you know, we're not approving the agreement tonight. It hasn't been advertised for that purpose either. This is a workshop. But in terms of whether or not you want a final agreement placed on the agenda, do you have to go to I don't think you need to go to the next meeting to say you don't want it placed on the agenda, or you don't think it's ready. So any future direction about where you want to go, I think it depends on what you're doing.
Okay, well, I guess then what I'm really asking is a motion to terminate any further discussion with this proposer an appropriate motion to consider at a workshop? What would that look like?
I think that you would I don't know if you're leaving it at that or if it's a direction of staff to pursue some other avenue. But yes, I think you could make a motion to terminate the negotiations because it's not really an action of approving anything. You're just telling the city telling staff not to move forward. If you want to place it on the council agenda for that discussion, you're free to do that as well.
Okay.
I'm.
Thank you. Okay. Councilman Fletcher.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to thank Mr. Milo for his presentation. I also want to thank Councilman Roth for his insights. Some of those were definitely eye-opening. But let's start where I feel we are at this point in time. Personally, I don't believe we should be a landlord as a city. I think that if we're going to move forward, my thought process would be to do an outright sale of the property. Then we're guaranteed whatever close to the appraised value we're going to get. That's money in hand. When we started this whole process, it was to help us alleviate the debt on the property. That continues to cost us day in and day out. As we moved along through this process, details changed. Talking with the manager, we've all had individual discussions with him. We've had individual discussions with Mr. Milo. Everybody up here has a different thought process of what we're going to do with this piece of property. We've tried to look at different ways of getting everybody on the same page. But the details continue to change. We've requested changes, again, individually. The city has asked Mr. Milo to help us out with some land use items out on the east side of town, which he has greatly agreed to, which I think is something that most developers would not have. all of these things have changed the dynamics of the entire overall project. Economics have changed tremendously since we started this project a year and a half ago. I think that if we continue forward, we need to look at either a flat-out sale of this property, or we come to an agreement with Mr. Milo to work through whatever risk we're ready to on ourselves to try and gain the most financial dynamic practice to the city. Economics is everything. That's what we're talking about here, money. I haven't had a whole lot of input from citizens in the city of Homestead. I don't know why that is. There's only a handful of people here tonight. I think, no, you're not the only one, but there's several people that we have not had complete input from citizens in the Homestead.
There's a few.
As we continue, I think we should continue having this debate. I think we should put this out on the city website, put Mr. Milo's presentation up there, put Mr. Ross' presentation there, let people take a look at this on the city website, provide us some feedback. We actually go out and attempt to gain some insights from those that we've looked at in the past as people of interest in the city of Homestead. I think it's bad fate for us to stop negotiating after a year and a half of hard work. We spent a lot of money. We spent a lot of money in staff time. We spent a lot of money in consultants. Mr. Milo has spent a lot of money in preparation for this, and I believe we need to continue this until we come up with a decision, yay or nay, but I think this needs to go on the council meeting for additional discussion. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman Fletcher. Who's next? Councilwoman? Well, we've got to finish with council first.
Sorry, Anton. Happy New Year, everybody.
Happy New Year.
Thank you for being a trooper in this process, Milo. Thank you, Councilman Roth, for providing, side-by-side analysis. This was one of my goals to accomplish today in the workshop was to kind of get out of the blur of the holidays and recapture, okay, what was the vision, where are we with the checking of the boxes. And I think we've done a great job tonight of kind of waking up and seeing the reality of where our negotiations have fallen, or landed, rather. One of the first things I said when we were discussing the 163 notice was that I preferred for us to go through an RFP process, and that I personally was interested in seeing what we could get out of developing not just this site, but the site across the street, the old YMCA. Because I felt that having a gateway to the city needs two pillars, not just one. And that it needed to kind of be, an impactful site. And by itself, it's a great project and concept. But that was my day one position. And out of respect for the request and from the mayor, I did want to continue and entertain it, and we pursued it, and we've gone through this journey together. And there have been many asks, and Related has conceded to those asks. With regards to the homeownership component, I felt that it was best to request for that to be removed, because if we were going to be landlords, I didn't want to have to fight with other landlords in our project. And so, I'm assuming the consensus in general was for that to proceed in that direction because it's no longer in the project. But I will confess that it was one of my requests to remove it. So I'm not sure adding it back would change a whole lot of the figures or not. But I would be willing to consider, revisiting that topic if it mattered most. To get my boxes checked, I was willing to bend on the density. And I told you, tell me what you need to get these boxes checked. But tonight, hearing, in the comparison, and I didn't hear any rebuttal about it, but the amenities have dwindled. And so those boxes aren't being checked anymore, but the units are significantly higher, with regards to the rooftops, the design,
The rooftop's there,
the
so
hotel.
it's there. Hotels is gone because it was in the parcel that's no longer part of the site plan, which is the out parcel, which the manager, after informed us there was a gas station, we're not sure
Right.
what environmental concerns there may be. And we were assuming that we can use some of that space, which he also informed us we can't because it's parking for the power plant.
Right. Originally, though, it was supposed to be along US 1, which was not an issue of a lot.
Originally, it was on US 1. Originally, that's correct.
Right. And so, I really support development of this site, and I supported this project through and through. But where it stands right now, and having gone through what feels like a circus of a process, and having asked multiple times on the dais individually for workshops to happen sooner so we can get to these discussions sooner so we can, and that not happening, it just feels wrong. The process feels like, was it being sabotaged? I don't know why this has taken as long as it's taken. And the consultants we have are the consultants we have. Why we don't have different consultants, or if we had different consultants, would they give a different opinion? I don't know. But if we were doing an RFP process and we were comparing apples to apples, we'd be able to have more confidence in how we vote and how we justify why we voted to approve a project. I think that you would still end up getting the project if we were to go through an RFP process. And considering all of the past deals and the bad deals, or what people might say were bad deals, retrospect is, an amazing thing. And if we were to approve to proceed tonight, there's always a better way to do it. So we're always going to look back at a deal and say, oh, this could have been done better. So I'm not necessarily hesitant on making a decision about what we have in front of us now and then saying, feeling regret later about it. So I think my position right now is that it's fallen apart, and it's, I really respect, your leadership tonight, Councilman Roth and Vice Mayor, for, bringing those extra points for consideration. The market is very volatile. It doesn't help to read in this consultant packet that the developer has not indicated a willingness to date to make upfront payments, refundable deposits upon project success, or penalty payments that would better incentivize them toward completion. Therefore, Rebel recommends allocating the capitalized lease payments to Phase 1 so that the city receives more value earlier on. And since the developer is not subject to penalty payments should they not build, Rebel also recommends that the developer pays for all of the capacity of dry, wet infrastructure for all 3 phases during Phase 1 to have more skin in the game, to offset those risks. And the risks are always going to be there. And this is why I'm saying, I still think we'd end up with something similar, and that you'll end up with the contract, but being able to justify that and say publicly to our constituents why we elected to go with this MDA, this development agreement, having it through an RFP process is the right process. That was my position day one. And it's unfortunate that it's taken this long to get to this point. I mean, over the last 2-3 months, we've had multiple meetings, right? I mean, why couldn't that happen a year ago, 6 months ago?
Your guess is as good as mine, Councilwoman.
I know. So I hope that this is not goodbye, but more like see you later, and that we're going to continue to have the discussion. But I'm calling off the wedding, Milo. I'm sorry. The wedding ring is off, the engagement ring is off the finger. And I'm going to have to support my colleagues because, you know, they've gone through this. You know, this is not their first rodeo. Yeah. And this is a huge project. It's a legacy project. And I want us to be unified in what we move forward with. And I know that you can get us there.
Well, I mean, I'll do my best, and I think that's what I've been trying to do is juggle 7 different opinions. But I will say this, you know, if your concern is about the market, you know, because now it's more volatile, if we had the ability to walk away from this deal at any point in time, we have the ability to walk away tonight. But a couple meetings ago, there was a dialogue about, well, Related is saying this, and then it changes to that. There's nothing in writing. And then this council instructed us to go back and put something in writing. It's in writing.
Right, we finally have it in writing.
We had it in writing at the last meeting. Right. And at the last meeting, we had some requests, and I made some concessions. So we've gone from, hey, there was no deal, to, wait a second, we want to put it officially in writing. I think it was the manager that requested for it to be in writing. We did that.
I know, Milo, and I think in my underwriter brain, being in real estate, the paper has to speak for itself.
Right.
It has to speak for itself. If we have to explain and tie it to, you know, Fannie, Freddie agreements and, you know, triggers of default and things like, if we have to explain that, the consultant should be able to read it and the paper should be able to read for itself. So although I can, in my mind, I can balance those things, but for the rest of us, it has to check that box for them.
So let me, and again, you know, we've got a lot of experience and a lot of projects in the pipeline. You ask a question, why has it taken so long? I'll ask a broader question. You have an experienced, capitalized developer, probably the most, certainly in Miami-Dade County, but maybe in the state of Florida, because we do stuff outside of here. So if it's taken this long to get an interested developer with the capital to build in your city, to get a deal on paper, how long is it going to take for you to build consensus on what this RFP or RFQ or RFP is going to require from the public sector, from the private sector? How long is it going to take your staff and your team to put this RFP out on the street? How long is it going to take for you to receive responses to that RFP? How long is it going to take, once you receive those responses to that RFP, to vet those responses and go through them? And let's assume you get 3 or 4 or 5 respondents like you had the last time. How long is that going to take? If with an interested party, with an experienced party, with a well-capitalized party, look how long it's taken us to get here. So I will, as Councilman Fletcher said, this started with the notion of like, hey, let's get this done because the city's paying $667,000 of general revenue just for a property that's sitting idle, and it's been sitting idle for a long time. And another point that's not even in our presentation, and it's not in your consultant's report, how much money is it going to generate in ad valorem revenue, in real estate taxes? That's additional revenue for the city. It's not even in our presentation. I just gave you actual payments on rent, you know? So I hear you. We compete in RFPs all the time. Now, will we compete if this process is terminated and you go to an RFP? I can't promise you that here today, and I won't. So the question, again, is you have an asset that is costing the city money. It's not allowing you to do other things in your revenue. We are proposing a development. We've had changes. I'm glad and thank you for putting on the record that the home ownership change was at your request. Thank you for that. I appreciate it. So it's not Related Urban decided to do a presentation and tomorrow change it. It's Related Urban talking to the 7 council members and trying to juggle all the different requests. And so, has it taken a while? Yes. Should it have been done quicker? Yes. But, you know, we have the staying power, we have the experience and the knowledge that sometimes these deals are a little bumpy, sometimes they take longer than anticipated, you know, but like they say, all's well that ends well. And so we could have left the market. We could have left the market because of all the items that the vice mayor's changed, you know, putting on the record. Of course, that's what people are doing. D.R. Horton, big companies are doing it. It's not just little developers. There's a lot of big developers doing it. Why? Because they can't put their finger on that climate in there. So again, we spoke about it, right? There's properties that are being brought to me. Hey, I got this property in Homestead. I heard you guys are doing this. I got this property in Homestead. I got this other one. And I'm like, I want to make sure how this is and how the business climate is in Homestead before I invest my capital. Because just like you have the ability to determine the value of your property, I have the ability to determine where I invest my capital. And so I'm here still today, you know, ready, willing, and able to consummate this deal, either on a leasehold basis or, if it's the will of the majority of this council, on a fee simple basis. Obviously, that agreement would have to change, but your attorneys have worked tirelessly to get you an agreement, which is what this council requested, through a lot of challenges. So I am sure that if the will of the council was like, hey, well, let's just modify this to fee simple, I'm sure that with your attorneys and our attorneys, we can get to that in short order, because the nuts and bolts of the transaction have been worked through. Now, site plan and a little density, a little more, a little height, the rooftop amenities is on there. I'm not sure why I keep saying that it's not there. It's there. We can go back to my presentation. It's there. So, yes, it's been a little bumpy, but sometimes to get consensus, as I take the feedback from the 7, it has to be a little bumpy, unfortunately, because other than saying, no, we're going this way and that's it, we're not changing. That's not my style.
I'd like to, rest and hear the rest of my colleagues. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Councilman Fairclough-Staggers, are you prepared?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. And thank you, Mr. Milo, and to our consultants. This has been a lot, very, very labor intensive. And Councilwoman Avila, you mentioned legacy project. This is definitely a legacy project, and I've been up here for 11 years and 2 months, and I've been a part of a lot of legacy projects. And what I know is that when we want to get something done, we make it happen. I'm not sure that has been the case here. To be very transparent, not pontificating, I was not happy with how the information was presented to me when I asked for balance, and I still didn't get it. I'm not sure if our consultants were told to tell us everything wrong, or they had a hard time finding something good to say. But if that was the case, tell me. I asked 3 times, and I didn't get what I asked for. And I don't think what I asked for was unreasonable. You couldn't find anything good with this project, tell me. Don't ignore me. And I'm not happy about that. But that's neither here nor there. I'm never too far to the right or to the left. You'll always find me in the middle. And it's disappointing that we haven't gotten to the middle. I feel as if we're at an impasse. Not really sure where we're going to go. Not enough concessions. I don't want to completely dismiss what our consultants have raised. Don't want to dismiss it. Upset that they didn't give me more positives. But in listening to Councilman Ross' presentation and Vice Mayor, this is your level of expertise, not mine. So I defer to you. When it comes to education, you kind of defer to me. And that's the level of respect that we have for, you know, our expertise in our occupations. So where I am right now, I don't feel we're in the middle. So at this point, I'm at a loss, like, where do we go? I can't say, do we proceed? Or do we just stop the process here? Do we go take it out for an RFP? I am all for RFPs, all for it. So that's where I'm kind of leaning right now, the RFP process, because we haven't gotten in the middle. And I'm not sure that this whole process allowed us to get to the middle. Feel like it was kind of one-sided. I don't know if I'm saying this because I didn't get the balance that I was looking for, but I'm just not happy with how this information was presented. Actually, I kind of like your presentation better, Councilman Roth. Because even when the consultants were presenting, I'm looking at what they have on the screen. I'm trying to follow along here at their number 1 and my number 1, their 12 and my 12, and it was completely different. Yes, it's completely different. So it was hard for me to even follow their presentation. Hard for me to follow. So I'm really not happy about that, and that's why I stayed quiet for a really, really long time, to make sure I didn't come across as angry. So that's why I spoke last. But where I am right now, I will respectfully go with the majority. But at this point, I'm feeling that an RFP may be in our future. I don't know if I'll be up here to see all this come to full fruition, because I have a couple months left. But I'll go with the majority here.
Thank you, Councilwoman, and thank you to our consultants and Mr. Milo. And, you know, a lot has been said tonight, and it's not necessarily accurate. And clearly, it's campaign season, and people are already posturing and starting to put their mud pies together. So rather than listen to some revisionist history, I've got to set the record straight here. I convened this council at some point for a visioning workshop regarding this site. And I truly believe that if we went back and rolled the tape, as they say, if I had the benefit of staff going back and doing the research that they apparently did for Councilman Roth, we would hear and maybe see Councilwoman Avila say, let's let the market tell us what goes on that site. We had the conversations in about an RFP, and I opened the floor for us to put our 2 cents in as to what each of us would like to see there. And ultimately, that conversation was, let's let the market tell us. Well, that's what triggered the 163 notice, and that's ultimately how we got here today. There was even discussion that, you know, perhaps an RFP is too constraining, that we can draw things, we can write things that that really take other good ideas perhaps out of contention. So let's not be misled about with this revisionist history that's being thrown out there tonight. There was a clear appetite across the board to do it the way we did it, and I'm quoting, "Let's let the market tell us." That was not my quote. That was a quote from Councilwoman Oval, and I believe if we go sit down and watch that tape, you'll see that. So, RFPs were never, to my recollection, never talked about. So, fast forward, Councilman Roth, I recall that it was your suggestion and your idea that this is our premium asset, an asset of the people of the city of Homestead, and we should never let it go. So let's talk about a lease rather than an outright sale. And I have to say in retrospect that that's why we are at the point we are at today. This is, in your words, a very complex, multi-layered deal. To the point that was made that we didn't have enough workshops or there were delays. I want to say that, the manager and I tentatively set some workshops. There's plenty of blame to go around on both sides in those early days, both with respect to these consultants and our prior consultants, as well as the related side. So it's not as if the manager and I weren't trying to move this forward. There were a lot of forces at play that pushed those workshop dates further and further ahead. Believe me, if I had my druthers, we would have had this resolution a long time ago. But again, and I think our second meeting back, I posed the question, is there an appetite to get rid of this uncertainty, have certainty, and sit down and negotiate an outright sale with certain parameters? I think you said you consider it. And you were very clear, Mr. Milo, that from your side of the table, you're not really interested in what the appraised value is. I think that's a fair assessment. But from our side of the table, we do have to look at that, whether it's looking at a return on investment or a cap rate or getting our money's worth. So, with the caveat that I individually don't have the authority to direct the manager to do anything, the manager and I had conversations, and he made the decision to commission an appraisal to determine the value of the property based upon your proposed use. We all understand that units are worth a certain amount of money per unit. This kind of retail is worth a certain amount per square foot, and restaurants are worth another. So that's in the works, and we don't yet have that. Do we have a date for delivery of that?
You are correct, Mayor. We anticipate it by the end of the month or early February.
And we're
That's our
already
understanding. Yes, sir.
careening through the 11th day of January already, and it was just the 4th of July. So that's coming, and I think that would be very beneficial for all of us to have the opportunity to look at that appraisal that's calculated based upon the proposed use. It gives us an idea of, at this snapshot in time, what is a market rate unit worth? In terms of what is a workforce unit worth? That's information that we probably should have had some time ago, but that's in the pipeline. And I think if we're going to continue to have the conversations about an outright sale to this party or anyone else, that's something that we need to have in front of us. And with respect to an RFP, I was talking with the manager and our attorneys earlier today. We could be looking at over a year from now before that comes to resolution. And I'm not suggesting that we cut corners or anything like that with respect to this parcel. But haven't we, in effect, visioned this property. I mean, I raised the issue a few months ago about, is everybody okay with this height and this density? Everybody seemed to be okay with this density other than me. Everybody seemed to be okay with that height other than me. I think the primary issue here seems to be the financial uncertainty. So if we're going to have further discussions about an RFP, all right, so are we going to go far afield from what's in front of us? Or would the adoption of this with the financial pieces in place, would that have been a settling for something? So if you're going to do an RFP, this may be a good starting point. And, admittedly, there are initial amenities that were programmed into this that have disappeared, Councilman Roth. They have, and we've got to decide and make the decision, okay, does that make the price go down because we're asking someone to spend more money to produce those amenities, and that may come later. So, while we throw around phrases like RFP and lease versus sale, we've kind of already had those discussions. And Councilman Fairclough-Staggers, I feel your frustration too. We seem to get a lot of information in different formats. It doesn't necessarily match what's on the screen. And Councilman Roth, a very good job was done of compiling that information. Some really good points were made. But I've got to say, first, that type of format would have probably been more beneficial to me than the formats of this back and forth with our consultants. But I've got to say that although those slides were truthful, sometimes the truth in the right context is a lie. And I want to be really clear that this deal has been evolving. Different council members ask for different amenities to be put in or taken out, or different calculations, whether it's being a full partner and sharing as a percentage of whatever that bottom line was versus some defined amount. So it's kind of superficial to say, and a little bit insulting to say they've gone from 1.1 billion down to the 1.3 a year, down to whatever it is now, because for me as an attorney, and again, that's, in light of the ever-evolving proposals that were on the table. But for me as an attorney, what's important is what came on that paper in front of us. And we've only had one set of contracts to consider in front of us. And those are the two contracts that were before us tonight. So, those of us in the real estate industry, we all know talk is cheap, air is hot. What's important is what shows up with the escrow deposit and a signed offer. And kind of, playing fast and loose with that analogy, that's only been before us one time, and that's what's before us tonight. So kind of meeting in the middle, if we do anything tonight, I'd like us to kind of take a break and get that appraisal in, reconvene, look at that individually with the manager, and obviously it's going to be a public document, and see if the related group or related urban development is interested in purchasing at, and that's our starting number, and obviously there's some adjustments to be made up and down there. But again, if it's sold to anybody, it's going to be sold with parameters, and we're going to have to establish those parameters. Now, the parameters that are in front of us are going to be programmed into that appraisal. So I think at the very least, maybe the appropriate course to take at this point is to see what those numbers tell us. I mean, I think clearly doesn't seem to be an appetite here for entering into an uncertain, and some would say unsecured obligation for lease payments. You're right. The dollar we get today is worth more than the dollar we get tomorrow. It gives us certainty. Debt is retired entirely up front, and we go off and we do what we need to do with land use approval set in place incident to that sale contract that we're all comfortable with and the public is comfortable with. So I'll leave it at that. Mr. Manager.
Mayor, just a quick question to Matt. If all of a sudden we're going to do a sale as opposed to what we're doing now, would we have to send out another 163, or we're okay with the one we've done already?
I'll go back and review the one, but generally, it just says the disposition of the property interest in any way.
Okay.
So I'll confirm that that's the case, and as long as that was the case, then it wouldn't make a difference.
Okay, just want to make sure.
I don't recall that we are constrained lease or outright sale. I think that was, at one point in time, the preference of the council before the intricacies really became known to us.
And typically, they'll be drafted for either, to contemplate either. It's the statute requires it for the disposition of any property interest, so it would apply in either case.
So before we go forward, I want to give Councilwoman Bailey the opportunity. I know she spoke last time, but all of us that spoke tonight, most of us had a chance last time as well.
Thank you, Mayor. Every meeting, I come in so hopeful. Tonight's the night. Tonight, it will all come together.
That's a song, Councilman.
It is. It is. And yeah, like most of you, I fell in love with the homestead version of City Place Doral. And although this is one of the most valuable corners that we have, I think the value that we have put into what it could look like goes so much further than selling it outright. So I just want to put my 2 cents in that I think that the real value that lies in it now is all of this work that we've all put into it. So keep that in mind. I will continue if we can, because if it can come down to one more time, when I asked last meeting to see what phase 1 and 2 looked like together, it was more to see, because one of my favorite parts of Doral was around that fountain, being able to walk around from the residential through the commercial, and we don't have that anymore. So if we can look at some of those first pieces that truly spoke to us and just refine some things, if we do continue to go on, that would be my request, is to look at the park, try to get back to a bigger number, because I think that that is something very homestead, to have that open space, that park space. I'm not sure what took away from that. If it's El Espacio, then we'll have to talk about it, but.
No, it was actually that it's a portion in phase one and a portion in the latter phase, if you look at the site plan. So in the aggregate, it's still the same. Actually, it's bigger than the original, but yeah.
So I would be okay with giving it one more shot, especially seeing what this new appraised value is, and for us really to look at all of the old renderings, think about what we really missed, and see if we can come back to this dream project.
Hey, just for clarification, and yeah. Is the appetite, the temperature tonight, to look more toward an outright sale for some concept rather than a lease?
Sorry, since I was still on, kind of. As long as those parameters and those programs can be set, I would be okay with either.
Certainly, that's always been my contemplation, that we will sell this to you for X amount of money in exchange for your provision of this concept and these amenities. I mean, clearly. Council Fletcher?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, I think you actually had a very good thought process there, and I think it's very important that we all sit back and take a breath. Again, we've been dealing with this for a year and a half, you know, and I believe that let's see what the appraisal comes back at. I think at that point in time, we will have additional details that will allow us to make a better decision, and I would make a motion to that point if that's what we need to do, or if there's no motion, if it's just an agreement among council members. But I think making a decision tonight either way would not be in the best interest of that property and the city of Homestead.
Okay.
Thank you.
So I guess kind of the direction would be take no action pending receipt of the appraisal?
Yes, sir.
And I think Councilwoman
thought
Fairclough wanted to
process.
weigh in. I don't know if you were seconding or had an afterthought.
Yeah, let me chime in here for a minute. The sale versus leasing, the whole premise of that, my thought process was, as a parent, you want to leave some security to your children when you pass on, right? None of us are passing on, but we are leaving the dais eventually. And the lease premise is that that payment will go on for 99 years. Not at the preset amount of $354,000 for sure, but at the original number that was given to us by HTG and by Related, 1.3 being the lower of the two at the time. That's a lot of police officers, and that's a lot of clean parks. If we sell the property, we don't sit up here anymore, and the money is not protected and designated for specific projects or whatever, another council can come through here and obliviate that money. With the lease in place, you know you have that in your general fund budget for many, many, many years to come. So that was the premise of that. I don't know that seeing an appraisal in 3 or 4 weeks is going to do anything but drag out the process that we can't seem to come in the middle and agree to. Mr. Milo is very good at what he does. He's a very good presenter. And no matter what the appraisal says, we won't get what we want. So, in order to avoid gathering again, to be disappointed one more time, I would counter Fletcher's motion that we don't have to make to end the process. We come together again as a unit, put together our wants, our wishes, and create the RFP. I don't know that it's going to take a year. We can put time specifications in there. Once we have given staff direction to what we would like to see on that property, including financials, including amenities. You question why I keep saying that the rooftop amenities are gone. Well, the rooftop amenities are in place for the residents who live there now. They're not there for the general public to come and enjoy a cocktail or a drink. So what you proffered up in December or November of last year is not my idea of a rooftop amenity if it's not open to the public. It does no benefit to the rest of the people that live in the city. So we're going to haggle back and forth over an appraisal that we're delaying the process of us getting together, creating the format, giving staff direction to create the RFP and go out to the world and say, listen, we believe in the city of Homestead. We know our value and our worth. What do you think? And Related is entitled to come back and do the same thing. Competition is going to get us the best possible deal we can get for our city. This process is not getting us that. This process got us all the way down to maybe seeing some money in year 5, 6, or 7. Maybe. I'm telling you, there are others out there that will love to work and be a part of the city as well. And I think we are shortchanging our opportunities by continuing this kicking the can down the road mentality. We need to come together, create this RFP process, and let city staff and the attorneys do all that research, put all that work together, bring it to us, and we can start to whittle things down. It's going to take time. It's going to take a process. Again, that's the most valuable piece of property we have in this city, aside from Harris Field and the YMCA property. It's not a motion. There's no need for a motion. We just have to give staff direction. If there's 4 or 5 up here that want to just move forward, that's fine. If there's 4 or 5 of us that want to say, end the process, give city staff time to gather themselves, put us together in a meeting, and we create the RFP process. So,
Mr. Mayor, can I respond, please?
Let Councilman Roth finish, and certainly.
and then we can move forward. We don't have to lose any more sleep. No offense, Mayor, but staff didn't help me put this together. I did all the research myself. Hours and hours of hours looking at videotape, listening to everybody's comments up here, listening to Mr. Milo speak, listening to the consultants. I had a little help in preparing the video, yes, but the research that went into everything I spoke about tonight was me. I did it all.
Did staff prepare the video, help you prepare the video?
They helped me prepare the video, yes. They didn't do any of the research. I told them timeframes, stamps, everything. That's what staff is supposed to do for us, prepare us for these meetings, okay? So I didn't burden staff with any of the research hours that I put into this. And when I say hours, it was hours of time. My poor wife, girlfriend, was tired of hearing the videos playing over and over and over again. But that's how important it was to me to understand and put this together, that this process is flawed the way we did it. And it's time to end it and move forward. Thank you, Mayor.
It seems that the lease process is a dead end. I believe that the process of a lease with anyone is a dead end.
Well, we don't know
Seemingly,
that.
and we'll
We don't
find
know
out.
that until
We'll
we
find
put it
out.
out there.
We'll find out.
I mean, you can't speak for everybody. Let's see what the world wants to offer us. You know, put us on the world stage.
Well, an RFP doesn't do that. Another 162 does that.
No, I don't want to
An
hear the
RFP
160. I don't want to hear the
creates-
162
creates
stuff.
limitations.
Let it create the limitations, because the
Mayor, can you call-
limitations it creates.
And there is no question called. Let me just lay it out there right now. I will not support any RFP that includes any residential development on Harris Field.
Well,
You
wait a
could
minute. We're not
just-
talking about Harris Field, Mayor.
No,
I'm sorry.
we're
I'm
not.
sorry. We're not talking about
It was
that.
talked about at length. It's been whispered about, and I've heard snippets for
And
a
we
year
can
and
talk
a
about
half.
this in a workshop after we decide we want to go forward with an RFP. We don't have to talk about
If
this
there's
now.
an agenda to put Harris Field, that's the most historic park in this town, into private hands, that's a non-starter.
I agree with you 100%. I have not, Harris Field is not on my radar. City Hall property is an eyesore. It's an eyesore. We've got hundreds of ducks living there that we can't legally remove because they're protected by the state. It's not good there right now.
Is that, do we know that statement to be true, Mr. Manager?
They could be removed, Mayor, but they would have to be
Killed.
Killed. And that's
They
why
have
we
to-
haven't moved on killing the
Okay,
ducks.
but they don't enjoy protected status as has been
No, but they would have
alleged.
to be destroyed if we call
Gotcha.
an animal
They
capture.
have to
that
be
would
destroyed on site. They can't be taken off site and destroyed somewhere else.
Correct. They can't be released somewhere else or anything. I don't know about destroying them on site, but they can't be released anywhere else. They will be destroyed.
Is that because they're considered a nuisance?
Yes.
Yeah, yeah,
Invasive
not
species.
non-local or natural animal here.
Yes.
Very good. One last comment. I hope that my colleague, who is so concerned about the congestion that's created by 600 units, is that concerned and that conservative when the application for 1,300 units in a congested area comes before us. Vice Mayor?
Mayor, we've heard everyone speak. We've heard from Mr. Milo. I'd like for you to request a consensus on what we want to do, if we want to continue to work with this developer or we want to cease negotiations. Can you call that question?
Well, my question was, are we just going to take a pause until we get the appraisal? Seemingly, there's commentary that that doesn't go far enough.
Which I agree with.
Okay, can I ask a question, Mr. Mayor?
Yeah, Mr.
So
Milo?
I just, point of clarification, this appraisal that is forthcoming is a valuation based on our development plan?
Mr. Manager?
Yes, it is.
Okay. So, if it's a valuation based on our development plan, and there's still some debate as to whether the development plan that is before you is the one that the majority of the council likes, that's going to be not very useful in this RFP scenario. And Councilman Roth, you talk about an RFP and you want to get together and put parameters. I can tell you by experience, and you can ask your consultants, I'm not sure they're experienced enough in this type of work to answer, but maybe they are. The more parameters you put in place to an RFP, the lower your value is going to be. Because what you're telling the private sector is, hey, we want to put this property and we want to build A, B, C, and D. Instead of what you originally asked for, Councilwoman Avila, let the private sector speak. If you handcuff the private sector, you're going to get less value. So it's interesting that on one side you're saying that for RFP, you know. On the other side, Vice Mayor, you're asking for this valuation and saying, hey, we want to get this other value because I guess the inherent question out there is that you believe that under the value of our development plan, it's going to come higher than your 12.3, and you want to have that discussion with us. But again, the only way that that value is increasing is with our plan. So take a step back and think about what that means if you end this process today. Because you're going to have this appraisal in 2 or 3 weeks, and you're going to get a value of X, and then somehow the council is going to say, hey, we think City Place Homestead is worth X. Well, is it? Or is it City Place Homestead with related plan is worth X? So you have a value. You have an as-is value of your land, right? That's what I think is your recent appraisal for. So you really, you know, just be careful what you ask for, because it's not about, yeah, we got this appraisal, now we're going to put these parameters and we're going to ask the public sector to pay this and we're going to pay rent. I mean, what are you going to put in your RFP? You're going to ask for a certain amount of rent from the private sector and you're going to tell them what to build and the rent that you expect? Be careful. You may get an answer you don't want to hear.
Mr. Milo, if I may.
Yes.
I don't think we'd be in the position we are today had, when we started this process, you had agreed to gross. You didn't want to agree to gross, to revenue share. You didn't want to agree to gross.
No, I proposed to you net.
You proposed to us net, which part of the reason we're here is because you didn't want to agree to gross. So that's point number one. Then we get a consultant to tell us, hey, this is a very complex proposal that we are being presented with, give us your opinion. And what they are hired to do is tell us everything that they see negative in the proposal, which that's what they're hired to do.
Is it, or is it to
Yeah.
give you the balance that the councilwoman is asking for?
If I'm going to hire a consultant, I can, well, maybe it's because of my experience, but I could see the benefits. But I want to see, give me the things that are not readily available to my eye because I'm not used to doing these kind of deals. So that's what they did. And I admire them for doing that. I admire them for doing that.
I guess
So
we'll
there
agree
was
to
some,
disagree
there was
on
some
that.
points in there that they said, hey, if you agree to A, B, and C, then we've got a done deal. We would have closed on this and we would have been rocking and rolling. There would have been dirt moving out there.
Vice Mayor, I agree with you 100%.
Right, but we're not there. So we've tried. We've tried to concede numerous times, and it keeps kicking the can down the line, and we're going to be at the same position, which is why I don't think we ought to continue this negotiation.
But let's put that into context. You're a realtor.
Yep.
And if you have a seller and they have 10 requests, is it reasonable, or a buyer that has 10 requests, is it reasonable and customary that one party is going to shake their head and agree to the 10 requests?
Well,
or
if
is it reasonable to try to find consensus and as many as possible?
It would be your opinion if there were industry standards. If we feel that they're industry standards, I think, and it's a completely different than a private deal. We've got 84,000 people that are looking at us saying, did you do the best thing for this city?
Yeah.
Which is why I think we've tried numerous times.
I would have to agree to disagree with that. I think consultants should be fair and balanced. I think your consultants were instructed to do exactly what you said, which is only find the negative. If they would have given you some positive, then we had even some more footing to be able to say, hey, you know what? Maybe 3%, maybe 3.25%. No, it's all negative. There's not one level of positive reporting in your consultant report. How is it that we've done the amount of work that we've been able to do, and we don't know anything about doing public-private partnerships? Vice Mayor, that's not fair and balanced. Come on.
Not fair, but you're so confident in all of the projects that you've done. I don't think the things that they were asking for were too far-fetched, especially with the confidence that you have. So I go back to the margin of safety is the pendulum swings way too much in your favor, and we're leaving the city of Homestead residents on the hook.
That's a fair request, but just like I can't put a value on your property, you can't put a value on my capital and what I invest in.
I can't. And what you said earlier, you said, hey, if you guys decide to do something different, I might not come back here, which is a fair statement. That is you're entitled to do that.
Absolutely.
But you also recognize that competition does give the city the best.
But I also recognize the fact that the message of the largest and most successful public-private partnership developer in this county walking away from a deal, either because the council wanted us to walk away or because we walked away, sends the wrong message to the private sector about what it means to invest in the city of Homestead.
No, I think it opens up an opportunity. I don't think it says the wrong message. It's an opportunity for others to tell the city of Homestead what their value is and what they're worth. So your analogy about the buyer and the seller, okay? When a buyer and a seller can't come to terms, what happens? The deal dies.
Yes.
Right? That's where we're at.
Well, it's a different analogy. Let's put it in context.
No.
He's mentioning your consultant, and I'm responding to your consultant in the fact that your consultant chose not to put one positive recommendation in their report.
Sure. You tell me what's positive about that. What's positive about this deal? So far, from November of 2021 to today, all you've done is taken things out of this deal and made it more powerful for you and shortchanged the city of Homestead. That's the problem, Milo. That's the problem. If you come back and say, hey, I'm going to give you that $1.634 million.
Yeah.
I'm going to pay off your debt. I'm going to build everything I said I was going to build. We're done. You get the deal.
So
but
go
at
back,
this point,
go
it's
back,
not there.
Let's go back and make it a percentage of cash flow, which is what was proposed in that deal.
Gross, of course. I'd do that.
No, not gross.
Why not?
Because that's not what I proposed.
Okay, well, that's not what we accept.
Well,
Mr. Mayor.
but then don't put it into context.
You understand
Councilman.
where this is going.
No, you can't pick and choose your arguments.
I can.
Oh, well, you
Plural,
could,
man.
but I'm just saying, let's be consistent. You're comparing a number based on a deal structure that I proposed to you, which you guys declined.
The reason we would not go with the net cash flow format was because we were paid last. And if there was no money left over, we wouldn't receive a dime. Is that fair?
What? Is
For
what
us
fair?
to be last on the totem pole and not get paid anything because there was no money left over?
Is it fair that you don't get any payment? Again, I'll go back to my question.
But no, is it fair?
Whoa,
that
hold
we
on.
don't receive
Hold
any
on.
money
But
because
we have debt requirements. Again, I'll go back to my question. We're a for-profit entity, Councilman. We're not a nonprofit entity. I'll go back to my question. Are we incentivized to make or not make?
That's not the point.
I gave you that. That was my deal structure originally. So don't. Let's put it into context.
But-
Don't
but
say
how
you
does
promised me this and now you switch to this. No, I promised you this. You guys
accused-
didn't want this, so we switched to a different deal structure.
You accused somebody of telling our consultants to find everything negative. You just did that. I don't appreciate that. These people work hard too. And if our consultants, you said that somebody told them to find everything negative. Sir, if there was something positive in there, the other day when that question was asked, they were like dumbfounded. They were like, whoa, there's really nothing in here for us to tell you that's good.
It's not my question. It's Councilman's question.
It was her
Councilwoman's
question,
She's
right.
saying it's hard to understand how there's nothing positive in this report. It
Right.
is.
Well, as I said, I think this is time to move on.
Let me recognize Councilman Fletcher.
Yeah, just real quickly again, I see that we tend to be a little heated on this side of the table and the other side of the table. Again, I think it's time that we take a small breath. You know, everybody has a good stance of where they feel at this point in time, and I think it's time for us to make a decision up here. You know where I stand. I believe we need to step back. Let's wait for the appraisal, and we can continue this at a later time.
That's where I would like to be. I don't know if that's where it's going, but that's where I would like to be.
Yes, I had a question that helped me to decide. Let me just say this, and I say this with love. This is not my area of expertise. I cannot look at this and determine the benefits. Give me a school improvement plan. Give me a turnaround plan. Oh, I can pick it apart, and I can tell you everything that's good with it. I can't with this. So if your jobs are to prepare us for these meetings, and I ask for something, give it to me. Give it to me. I can't look at it and tell the benefits. And if you can't find it, tell me. Tell me. Don't ignore me. So it's not that I'm saying, oh, you charged them to give us everything negative. Maybe you did. Maybe that's what they were paid to do. But if you want me to be here and do my job, help me. Help me. I stand by that. To me, it feels like they just picked it apart. I stand by it. And that does not make me feel good because you didn't prepare me. Tell me no. Tell me you can't find it, and I am okay with that. If I ask you for something unreasonable, tell me. I'm not an unreasonable person. Tell me, and I'll live with it. So I wanted to put that on the record. Yes, I feel like they told me everything negative. They didn't give me what I asked for, and I'm not happy. My question to you, Mr. Milo, and this will determine whether or not it's even worth going forward. If in November you presented a project that everybody fell in love with, are you willing to go back to that? Because we've had these meetings and it's like, it's only we take 1 inch, 1 inch, 1 inch. If that's what it's gonna take a month from now, like what's the point? This is frustrating.
I agree
and I was
with
about
you.
to get my person walk out.
No.
Because I don't like how this discourse is going.
I agree with you. And again, that's why I said I thank, Councilwoman Avila as one example to say, look, the home ownership is something that was pulled out of that proposal. Just using that as an example, it was a request. So if now you're saying, hey, let's take a break, let's wait for this appraisal, can you, Mr. Milo, go back to November 21 and look at that site plan and see what we can do with that site plan, you have my word that I will do that. You have my word that I will be a little more patient and wait for this appraisal to come, and I will compare that concept to what is there today. And if you want to have a dialogue of why that doesn't, why we're not putting it in there, it was the discussion we had about homeowners. They have homeowners association rights. There's going to be shared amenities. How's that going to work? When you're going to do, so it got a little bit sticky. So that was one of the reasons why we said, okay, it's probably better, let's take those units out. But will we look at it? Yeah, I guess we could look at it, but so again, we can also go back to the financial terms of that November deal, which is a cash flow participation. So again, I'm trying to do my best to take the feedback from the 7 and try to incorporate that feedback.
My Part B question is, for me, I am more interested in the commercial and the amenities over the density.
Yep.
Period. I'm not sure if there was a conversation about Flanagan's being a partner on this site.
Yep.
But it seems as if the community is really excited about the Flanagans.
Yep.
So have you had conversations with them to partner?
Absolutely.
To come onto the
I've
site,
had
and how has that gone?
Numerous conversations with Flanagan's. They got 2 requests, main requests that are deal breakers for it. Number 1, they need a left-hand turn northbound into the site, which doesn't exist today. We have asked our civil engineers to look at that. You need to get an exemption from the state DOT. The only way to obtain that exemption is by getting rid of the southbound lane left turn into Harris Field. No other way logistically to do that, okay? So we have definitely looked into that. And the other request is Flanagan's wants to own the deal fee simple.
I'm sorry, what was that?
They want to own the property. So I've had
that's a deal
personal
breaker?
discussions with Jimmy Flanagan myself. So am I a supporter of Flanagan's? Absolutely. Do we have a space for Flanagan's? Absolutely. Can we modify our site plan, and have we talked about modifying it for them? Absolutely. So I'm very well aware of them, and I've had numerous conversations with them. But those are 2 things that are requirements of theirs.
Okay. I just wanted to, if this moves forward, there can be more, I just wanted to.
And that's a great question, too. One more point. If we're going to go this valuation and we're going to try to find a fee simple approach with basically selling the land, not leasing the land, then that would help on this discussion with Flanagan, because that is one of their requests.
I'm sorry, I have one more question. I promise this is it. How much have we spent on the consultants?
They have a contract not to exceed $125,000. I would have to go back and look at what they've invoiced. They have not invoiced nearly that.
And Councilwoman, they are working with us on the RFP for the Triangle property as well. So it's not just for this particular project.
I would like to know how much
We will get you the
this
number.
costs.
I believe this is your second consultant.
This is where I am. We have been at this for a long time, over a year. If this stops now, I won't be a part of this. I'll be gone. There'll be somebody else up here. Point 1. Point 2, we've been at it this long. I'm willing to give this another month and see where we are. If nothing materializes, that's it. Another 30 days won't hurt. But if we come back in 30 days and we're still here, then I'm out. I'm done.
And to your point, I think Mr. Milo has heard loud and clear tonight, like no other night before, what amenities need to be included and what the financial concerns are for this project. And I think it's incumbent on us to have that appraisal to help us in our analysis to determine whether A, it's a reasonable financial deal, and B, do the terms proposed secure those payments? And you know, is there the appetite to go to the fee simple? And to Councilman Roth, to your point, let's say for sake of argument the appraisal comes in at $13 million and we sell it for $13 million. We put 4 in our pocket. We have the ability to sequester that and allocate it, as you talked about, clean parks and more police officers. And I think it would be important for us to do the math that under the deal proposed, how long would it take that cash flow to produce that hypothetical $4 million? Because $250,000, $300,000 a year, and I hate to have to say it this way, doesn't go very, very far when it's coming in dribs and drabs. And we can, you know, I think that's one of the factors we would need to look at in analyzing a lease with anybody versus a sale with anybody.
If I may, thank you. Yeah, but you make my point for me. We end up with only $4 million. If we took the deal he's offering us today over 99 years, that's $193 million. We're shortchanging ourselves quite a bit. So whether there's risk or there's no risk, the annuity is the important part of this, not the $4 million.
The
Now,
important part is the security for the receipt of that annual payment.
Well, that's what we're working on.
And I think that's been the bone of contention here tonight. The biggest bone of contention here tonight has been securing, you know, as certain as we can be, that stream of income.
Yeah, I think there's many things that we're talking about tonight. Not only the income, but the amenities that have been, you know, stripped out of this project. You know, I still don't think that the appraisal is going to change anything, you know, in a month. I just don't think it's going to change anything. We're not getting a Flanagan's on the corner, apparently. He just said that. It's not going to be there at this point. He can't come to an agreement. He wants a fee simple
I don't think that's what he said at all.
Yeah, hold on a second, Councilman,
Well,
please.
if he owns the property, then
But-
you could work out a deal, but
But please, don't put words in my mouth. What I said was that I've had numerous discussions with Jimmy Flanagan personally. And what I said is that I know the portion of the site that they're interested in, which is the portion of the site to the south of the entrance on US 1. And in order for them to come to the site, they want a left-hand turn going northbound on US 1. And we've looked into that with our professionals, and the only possible way to achieve that is to eliminate the southbound left turn into Harris Field in order to reconfigure the road and make a turn into the site so they can have their Flanagan's where the old library is today, basically. So it's not about the corner, it's about the left-hand turn.
yeah, but it's also you said the fee simple part of it.
And they want a fee simple deal. So if it is the will of this council to have a Flanagan's, that is a request of Flanagan's.
Right, so we can cut that portion out of this deal and give it to Flanagan's.
Not without my consent.
Well, you don't have a deal with us yet.
That's correct. But if you want to do that deal, you might do your Flanagan's, and maybe we're not doing our deal. But yes, we've had discussions with Flanagan's.
So, Councilman, if I might,
And-
if he had a lease deal, we have the opportunity to amend the lease deal to allow a carve-out for fee simple ownership of that defined site, whether it's related or anyone else, if the preference is to do that 99-year lease, and Flanagan's is important to us, that can be a hybrid, so to speak. You've got that 2-acre island there that would be under fee simple for a specified purpose.
Yeah, I can see how that could complicate things even more, doing all that, so. All right, well, I guess we're at a point where it sounds like it's going to move forward, at least for another month, based on what our colleague Staggers is saying.
I think that's a fair characterization of where Councilwoman Fairclough Staggers, Councilman Fletcher, and I are. That's only 3.
Right.
So to wait, to do nothing pending receipt of the appraisal. And Councilwoman Bailey comes in as a 4th. So we're just going to hit the pause button.
If I may.
Yes, Councilwoman.
Having the non-tax assessment revenue is very important to me in this process, so the annuity payment, being in a lease is where I prefer. Unless there's more discussion on the sale and how that's more beneficial, I'm happy to listen to it, but that's where I'm at right now is lease. And the black and white contract. The black and white contract has to be ironclad. Being in the middle is where I want to be as well, but it doesn't seem, we're far from there right now. And yes, let the market speak. That was, I say that all the time, and that was an effort to support this item. But I also said, I think an RFP is more appropriate, but I'm willing to collaborate. I'm willing to participate and put in the sweat equity and to try to find ideas on how to make it work.
Right.
And I thank you for contacting Flanagan's. I believe I gave you the phone number.
You were the first one to give me the phone number initially, yes.
Thank you. So my efforts and my sweat equity and hours and hours and hours, and I appreciate everything you did, Councilman Roth, because sitting there listening to those videos, I do it all the time. That is exhausting. And we're all doing it. We're all putting in the time and effort. So to sit up here and to maybe give an impression that mud is being thrown, I don't appreciate that, because that just negates everything that I've put into this transaction and trying to get to a common ground. So those are my bits and pieces for the record. And I'm always willing to listen to more discussion, to review more information, the appraisal. I don't want to drag you through this any longer. And out of respect for you, I would say, let this rest until we have a roundtable discussion, a workshop, not on the dais, in a boardroom, and say, are we all okay with no home ownership component? And I'll tell you why I made that request. Are we all okay with rooftops only on residential, or do we want more rooftop for public use, which is what I was wanting to see, not just residential rooftop? Are we okay with the layout and the site plan that's being presented? I'm not impressed with the site plan, and I've deferred those comments because I understand that we're just trying to get an MDA, and we'll talk about site plan and all the beauty, perks, and designs and awnings and all that at a later time. But it just feels like how long this has taken. We can't even get to a black and white contract.
Well,
I'm trying to follow the process, and the process has led me to a dead end. So that's why I'm hesitant to give it another month, but I'm okay with giving it another month, and I will go with the majority. I'm happy to listen, and I'm sorry that you're at this point right now.
No need to apologize or be sorry. We're accustomed to this work, and like I said,
it's business.
Sometimes it's business, and sometimes it's a little bumpy, but we get through it.
Okay. Just a quick reminder so we don't lose sight of it, and I've asked for a calculation. All of the real property tax revenue to be generated from whatever project is sequestered to the CRA. It is not part of the general fund. That's important to know. So, I've asked them to kind of massage those numbers at Mr. Milo's value of build out and the value of the underlying land. What can we perhaps foresee coming into the CRA, in perpetuity, certainly for all of our lifetimes. Is there anything further, council? Okay, so Mr. Kraft doesn't jump all over me. Is there any public comment? We made our decision, but I'll let you weigh in. Let's get, you need a microphone? Or you, okay.
Yeah, of course I have something to say. You are the Magnificent Seven without exception. And it goes a long way, the Magnificent Seven. Some people know why you're called the Magnificent Seven, but those who don't, look it up in the history books. And back to what we are here today to talk about. I think it's important to think that, take into consideration the work Milo have put into this project, the work that have been put in by staff, and you can say they have been helpful or been not been helpful. Everybody's serving an agenda. And I think when we think about the money that Milo is coming with to the city and you are asking for, whether it's going to be a lease or it's going to be a buy, there is something about $9 million of a lawsuit that's being paid out. There's also something about the amount it costs to sit on that property up there, 600,000 and some change, right? That's money that's being paid by the citizens, more or less, right? And it's taken forever to find a project. It's taken forever for you guys to talk back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And then we have the magnificent consultants up there who have been hired to find faults and things they could point their fingers at. If I go and buy a suit, I don't find a perfect suit. I find a suit that fits most of my criteria, right? It may not be the one that I exactly want. It may not be the best one, but it was one that was a variable. It is what it is. It's real politics. You give and take. You don't get all your needs or all your wishes because it's not a kid's birthday. It's real politics. Give and take. You don't get everything you want in the candy store. You don't, Erica. You don't, Jennifer. And Jerry, you don't get everything you want because it's not the village. This is Homestead. This is Homestead. The end of the road, basically. It's a peninsula. People have to drive here down for a purpose. Many people don't go down here on their own free will. They have to come here for a purpose, either to work or to sleep. There's no attractions down here. Not even Larry is an attraction. The Air Force Base is a bigger one. And the old Phantom jet on Homestead Boulevard is a bigger attraction.
Mr.
Right?
I think your 3 minutes are up. Thank you,
I
Mr.
know,
Kraft.
I know, but I can keep talking just like the rest of you can. Thank you for today.
Thank you. There's nothing further then. Meeting adjourned. Thank you all.